Rip Van Winkle 3. He heard a man talking about something that did not make any sense to him. Some of the men in the pub started asking him questions, but Rip did not understand what they were asking him. A nicely dressed gentleman pushed forward and asked Rip what he was doing in the pub. "I'm looking for old friends," said Rip. "Who are these friends? Name them," demanded the man. "Nicholas Vedder is one of them," replied Rip. There was silence, and then an old man called out, "Mr. Vedder's been dead for 18 years. "Well, where's Brom Dutcher?" asked Rip. "Oh, he was killed in the war. He never came back," said someone else in the pub. "What about Van Bummel, the headmaster?" said Rip. "He went off to the war too, became a great general, and is now a politician," explained somebody else. Rip was very sad. His home and his friends were all gone. He found himself all alone in the world and was confused. In despair, he then called out, "Does anyone here know Rip Van Winkle?" "Rip Van Winkle's over there by the tree," exclaimed a couple of people. Rip turned to see a man who looked identical to the man he had once been, leaning against a tree. "I feel ill," Rip moaned to himself. "I don't understand what is happening. Who am I?" The people in the pub also started to look concerned. They also thought the old man was crazy. "We should take the gun off him before he does anything stupid," whispered one man to another. At that moment, a pretty woman pushed forward. She held a chubby child in her arms. The child began to cry. "Shh! Be quiet, Rip," she said to the little boy. "The old man won't hurt you." The name of the child, the woman's face, and her voice reminded Rip of something. "What is your name?" Rip asked her. "It's Judith Gardenier," she replied. "And your father's name?" he asked. "Oh, my poor father. Rip Van Winkle was his name." "It's 20 years since my father left home with his gun," the woman told him. "He never returned. Only his dog came home. We don't know what happened to him, whether he was carried away by some other people or he shot himself. I was just a little girl at that time." Rip had one more thing to ask. "Where's your mother?" The woman looked at him and said, "I'm afraid she died not so long ago." Rip could not control himself any longer. He hugged the woman and her child. "I am your father," he cried. "I am Rip Van Winkle." He turned to the crowd of people staring at him. "I was once young Rip Van Winkle, but now I am old Rip Van Winkle. Does anyone know poor Rip Van Winkle?" Everyone was amazed. An old woman went over to Rip to look closely at his face. "He is speaking the truth. It is Rip!" she cried. "Where have you been for 20 years?" Soon everybody knew Rip's story. For him, His one night on the mountain had really been 20 years. One old man said that he had heard that the mountain was haunted by strange beings. The man Rip had seen leaning against the tree was actually his son. Rip went home with his daughter. They all lived a long and happy life.